Hello and welcome to another episode of Light Talk, where we talk about trends in the optics industry with some of the best in the business. I'm your host, Scott Bass, and I am here with a very special guest today, imaging manager at Edmund Optics, Nick Sischka. Hey, Nick, how are you today?
Hey, pretty good, Scott. You know, it's still early in the morning yet. The coffee's kicking in, but I'm excited.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited for you to be here. So, Nick, I don't know if you know this, but we hit a very special milestone with Light Talk today. This is our 10th episode already. Exciting, right?
Oh, no way. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
So Nick was our very first guest, actually, and really helped kick off the series. And we've had, many other talented guests since, and the series really has gained a lot of traction. So thank you, Nick, for being a guest on our first episode and now our 10th episode. Do you feel honored?
Of course. Yes. And I hope that I can come back and do the 100th when we get there. And I just think back to where we were when we first filmed that first one, with so much change and uncertainty and everything going on, and how everything has moved back.
Because it was probably about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And now we're in the office and things are getting somewhat back to normal. It's exciting. So I'm really
exciting. And next step, we'll do this in person, face to face. So
absolutely. Yeah. And that new studio
for that. Yep. All right. So there's really only one thing to talk to you about, and that's imaging. For those that don't know, Nick knows everything there is to know about imaging. Seriously, I vouch for Nick and challenge anyone to outsmart him when it comes to imaging principles. And one of my favorite topics within imaging is ruggedization. I'm just fascinated with the imaging solutions when it comes to harsh environments. We can't talk enough about ruggedization, right, Nick?
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of crazy to see, with the way that camera technology has been developing and the way that robotics have been developing, people have just been putting stuff in more places than we've ever thought that they would ever be putting them, right? Even if you look at the way that robotics has been shifting away from just being being used in heavy industry like an automotive, and now you're seeing robots in people's homes, right? And those all have vision systems on them, and so they're being placed in these environments where we never really thought they would go. So they're being put outside, they're being put obviously they're all over all of our vehicles, right? My car has 8 cameras on it, right? All these different things where they're going to places where they're being put in environments where they're not just in a nice factory automation environment with it that we're traditionally used to building. And so we're seeing them go into high temperature environments. We're seeing them go into high shock environments. We're seeing them go into places where it's not really kind to them. And so it's been really, really fun to watch the way that we've needed to change our mechanical designs and our optical designs so that they can survive, getting sprayed with water or getting dropped off of a cliff or something like that, right?
Amazing. And you mentioned high temperature, and that's what I want to talk to you about, athermalization. And for those who don't know, it's the ruggedization for applications in extreme or changing temperatures. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
So tell us about the key impacts of temperature on imaging performance.
Right. So temperature is a crazy thing, right? It affects everything, right? I mean, we all know and understand thermal expansion, right? When things heat up, they get bigger, and so that affects optics as well, right? And so you can run into issues where if something's in the direct sun or what have you, you have the focal length or the focal distance is changing, and so your image can quite literally blur. If you have a lens that's just your traditional factory automation lens that didn't need to be designed to handle crazy swings in temperatures. And so athermal lenses are designed to combat that, essentially, to remain and retain their stability throughout those temperature swings.
So now, in your experience, where do people typically go wrong when it comes to dealing with extreme temperature variations in their imaging systems?
Well, I think it's a good question, because I'm not sure it's really where people go wrong. I think that in many cases, there's just not a lot of options for them. And so that people are trying to make do with the existing solutions that are on the market, and there's just not a lot of them out there. And so what you need to do in order to then deal with those temperatures is you need to build a big enclosure around systems so that they can be actively cooled, right, or actively warmed to maintain a stable temperature. And so that adds a lot of cost and complexity and additional components into that system. And so the way that you've traditionally had to deal with it is with a lot of external resources, and it can be clunky and cumbersome.
All right, and I'm sure we could talk about this all day. And I understand you are hosting an upcoming webinar on this very topic, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So Dr. Boris Lange, my colleague in Germany, and I are talking about athermalization. Going to talk about a brief overview of kind of what happens when you start changing temperature, everything from the mechanics to the optics and how those change, and also how you can combat that using passive athermal designs.
Great. Well, the webinar is being held on March 24th, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So I encourage everyone to join and hear more from Nick on this topic. So, all right, Nick, well, thanks again for giving that overview. And thanks for being our second time guest. Always a pleasure to have you join the show. Any other parting words of wisdom before I let you go, or should we save them all for the webinar?
Oh, I think we'll save most of them for the webinar. I've only got so much in this tank, but thank you for inviting me, and I'm so excited to be on the 10th episode.
Yeah, sounds good. Looking forward to it. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on Light Talk.
Thanks, Scott.